in, ladies and gentlemen, to NBR, or as we like to call it around here, Nothing But Rants, the show where I find topics that I'm oddly passionate about and I pontificate upon them. These are not hot takes, but rather takes that I'm hot about. What's up? You really like that? You really like that?
Let's shut up and grind some tape.
What is up, ladies and gentlemen? Welcome into our Tuesday edition of our live NBR here on the Film Guy Network. Obviously, normally we do local hour first, national hour second, but every Tuesday during the college football playoff rankings reveals, we come to you with our live reaction show right after the college football playoff rankings. They were released today, just about 30 minutes ago. Hey, how about that? Giving us the rankings prior to a crappy college football or basketball game. Here we go. Georgia, Michigan, Washington, Florida State, Oregon at 5. Ohio State drops to 6. Texas, Oklahoma, Missouri, Penn State. The rest doesn't really matter. Heck, Penn State and Missouri technically don't matter in this mix. But didn't see a ton of movement today. I thought the biggest discussion point that we need to talk about just in terms of reactions to the rankings. First of all, welcome in, boys. Appreciate you guys for joining us today on the network. Make sure you hit the thumbs up button, like, subscribe, rate, review, and all that good stuff. We got a loaded one for you. I thought my initial takeaway was, dang, only 4 drop spots for Ohio State, and they keep them above Texas and Alabama. That immediately made me think, ooh, not so sure that just winning you're in for Texas and Alabama. That was my immediate thought, boys. What say you?
Oh, yeah. As soon as I saw that one, I was like, I would be sweating bullets if I was an Alabama fan, knowing that there's potential where you could beat the number 1 team in the country for the SEC championship game, and you still get left out of the mix for this college football playoff. So it'd make me nervous.
4 spots is a lot to jump, even though you beat the number 1 team in the country late in the season.
Yeah, I definitely saw it as the committee was basically saying you have to win your conference to jump, even have a shot at jumping. But again, if all the teams ahead of you win, if Oregon wins, if Florida State wins out, if all those other teams, you're going to be on the outside looking in.
I thought it was interesting to hear Boo Kerrigan acknowledge that he thought Florida State was a different team, was his terminology, without Jordan Travis, which, at least in my mind, when I heard that, it opens the door for what the discussion that ultimately this all boils down to. This all boils down to whether or not the committee's job is to select the best football teams, the 4 best football teams, or whether their job is to select the 4 most deserving football teams of the college football playoff, which is where we're at. And that little opening, talking about the fact that Florida State is certainly a different football team without Jordan Travis, that little sliver of a comment to me left an open door to the discussion of whether or not they're going to be selecting the 4 best teams on Sunday or the 4 most deserving, assuming that Florida State wins out. So I wanted to bring it to you guys, not only to you guys here on the stage, but to you guys in the chat as well. Is it the job of the committee to select the 4 best teams at the end of this thing, or is it their job to select the 4 most deserving football teams at the end of this thing? And normally it hasn't mattered, okay? It really hasn't. Normally it's been kind of a combination of both, but this year it's going to matter at 4 and 5, and it's going to ultimately decide who gets pissed off and leaves thinking that they got cheated. So I ask you guys, gentlemen, is it the job of the committee to select the 4 best football teams, or is it the job to select the 4 most deserving football teams?
You know, honestly, I think for this year, I think it's almost a mix of both that you should analyze it as, because we know that Florida State neither has the best resume, and they really don't look like one of the best 4 teams in the college football. So that automatically, to me, should kind of put them out and put aside. So I think if you kind of do a combination of both, then this year you would get the 4 best football teams, because you have teams that do have really great resumes. And in a sense of like Oregon, if they beat Washington, they would have a really good resume and they would pass the eye test, and we would claim them as one of the best 4 teams in college football. So I think for this year, at least by itself, I think if you do a mixture of both, you'll get the best of both worlds.
I think the both approach is ideal, right?
Yeah.
You can't be stern one way or the other.
It's always been a mix of both. We had a system where it was the best team based on metrics and all this computer science. It was called the BCS. Everyone hated it. Yeah. So then you add humans to the mix, and then you say, most deserving based on what? Metrics, eye tests, things such as that, things a computer can't watch or see. So it has to be both. It's not one or the other.
I thought it was also interesting that they noted Georgia set 3 starters. That was Boo Kerrigan's terminology. and they recognize that. Should we note that, hey, Ohio State only fell 4 spots, okay? Should that tell us anything about what they might view? And Georgia didn't fall after, to 2 after Michigan, beat out Ohio State this weekend for essentially winning the Big Ten, assuming they handle Iowa. Should we take into any account that, Georgia might be able to be a 12-1 entrant, assuming, they lose in a close fashion this week in the SEC championship game?
I think it definitely confirms that there is a path for Georgia to lose and still get in the college football playoff. Definitely would still need some help. Definitely would need some teams inside of the top 4 like a Florida State. Honestly, in my personal opinion, if Georgia is going to get into the college football playoff with a loss, you need Texas to lose and you need Florida State to lose. If those 2 teams lose and you lose, I think then you're still in the top 4.
Yeah, I mean, ideally, Michigan, Texas, Florida State, every team that's behind you that can lose loses.
Yeah, no kidding.
And you basically pull the committee's hand and say, hey, we're still one of the best teams out there. We lost to Alabama, but so what? All these other teams, your Big 12 champion is 8-4 Oklahoma State.
Yeah.
So it's like that you would need that to happen.
We're about to get into nightmare scenarios, okay, which is something that we love to do now. We stumbled upon this last week, but I want to ask you guys before we get into that. I think there are 2 certainties. We know Michigan's going to get in. Well, I mean, there's in a normal world, we don't believe Iowa to be capable of beating them this week. Agreed?
I would say Michigan probably has the best chance.
All right.
It's the safest I've ever.
I'm just trying to make it easy for everyone at home as well. Michigan, we feel like is in.
Yes. Right.
We feel like whoever wins Friday night in the Pac-12's in, no matter what.
Yes.
Yes.
Right. Those are the only 2 things we know.
Yeah.
For a fact. Georgia wins, they're in, but we don't know that. We don't feel good about that matchup. But what I'm saying is we feel good about whatever happens in Big 12, answer. We feel good about Big 10, answered. We don't. Everything else is up in air, right?
Yes. Yeah, I mean, I would say if Florida State wins, they're in.
I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know.
I'm like 90% sure on that one. Like, if they win, I think that they would be put in, but I wouldn't still stand there 10 toes down saying, like, yes, Florida State is absolutely a lock as long as they win.
All right, let's do it, Kirby. You got 2 nightmare scenarios for me to draw up here. So let's do it. What happens?
So the first one I have is every team in the top 4 loses this week.
All losers.
That would give you essentially 7 or 8 12-1 football teams.
That's a nightmare.
12-1, 11-1 football teams.
That is a nightmare.
That's a nightmare. So at that point, we take if all the undefeateds lost, we know Oregon's in, right? That would assume they won the Big 12 or the Pac-12.
Correct.
Okay. We don't have a Big 12 champion in because that means. Are you assuming Texas loses in this situation as well, or did Texas win?
So
the
it's
Big 12?
everybody in the top 4 loses and everybody outside wins, right?
Basically.
Okay, so Texas is in, right?
Yes.
Big 12 champ. All right. So what else happens there in that scenario?
You have
Ohio State gets in, probably.
Well, you don't. Do they?
Do they?
Because, I mean, is Washington going to fall out? Is Michigan going to fall out? Is Georgia going to fall out?
If Washington falls out, if Washington loses this week, they're cooked. I'm going to tell you that right now.
Even if all the teams behind them lose, though, is my point. If Texas loses,
Ohio State's sitting at home. Yes, they would fall behind Washington.
Okay.
Or Washington would fall behind Ohio State. Late loss type deal, all that good stuff. We still have to figure out other options. Georgia would lose. Alabama would be a winner in this situation. They would be one of these teams that we would have to make a decision about, correct?
Mm-hmm. Correct.
All right. So who else we got in this situation that's still a one-loss football team?
Does Michigan?
Louisville would have beaten Florida State.
Florida State's
cooked.
Yes.
Okay.
Michigan, a 1 loss to Iowa, but you beat Ohio State.
I honestly believe in this situation, it would be Alabama to go and Ohio State to go. Sorry, Michigan, you lose as a 20-point favorite in the Big Ten championship game. You don't get to go.
So then why does Ohio State get in over a Georgia or a Washington?
That's a great question.
Yeah.
Let's completely erase, this check mark because we don't know that for a fact. You are correct. In fact, Georgia's going in this situation, in my opinion, because I don't think the committee is going to set precedents for punishing you for playing in your college or your SEC championship or your conference championship game.
Definitely not over a team that didn't
got to sit at home. That's what I'm saying. You're not going to get punished for participating this week in this scenario.
Yeah, especially knowing that you did the same thing that the other top 4 teams did as well and lose your conference championship.
So in other words, this is our route to a 3 SEC playoff team or playoff, right? Texas, Alabama, and Georgia. All right, what other scenarios you got for me? Last one.
So the other one I've got is what if Michigan loses, Texas loses, Bama loses, and Oregon wins?
We should have planned this out a little bit better. Michigan loss, okay?
Michigan loses.
They're out.
Texas loses.
Texas loses. They're out, okay?
Bama loses.
They're out. Georgia's in. That solves that one, okay? Georgia is a check mark.
Correct.
All
Oregon wins.
Oregon is a check mark in this scenario. Oregon won their Pac-12. Washington is available at 12-1 now. Okay, so we'll put Washington way down here in the corner.
I just assume that Florida State won as well.
All right, well, if FSU wins, they're in as well. So what are we trying to debate here? What are you trying to bait me into?
Then
the
it's
discussion of Washington at 12-1 versus who?
Well, it then becomes Michigan, Ohio State, Washington.
Michigan, Ohio State, Washington. They would take. How did Michigan lose to Iowa?
They lost. They lost a 21 to 17 game.
That is Michigan going in. All right, they're going to send Washington home. They're not going to reward teams for sitting at home like Ohio State, who doesn't have a head-to-head.
So you think that Washington gets sent home even though they lose to a team that they already beat, which is ranked significantly higher than Iowa?
Yeah, this is the tough world right now that we live in, because we have 7 or 8 legitimate Power 5 football. This ain't debating Texas versus Cincy, baby. This is Texas versus Washington. This is big school, big brand, Power 5 football. Put them on a field. There's a net 4-point spread in Vegas. You know what I mean? These are legitimate discussions. And for the first, it took daggum 8 years. You know what I mean? But we finally got here. We finally got to this one. Do you have anything else?
No, that was all I got. I just think it's interesting to think about how if it comes down to a Washington and a 12-1 Michigan, who gets the nod there? Because I mean, essentially at that point, you both played in your conference championship. You both lost to Michigan lost to an inferior team more than Washington did. So I think that's where my debate comes in.
And I think it's easy to sit here and say that none of those situations are possible. But I also don't think that last year we would have thought that TCU would lose to Kansas State and USC was about to lose to Utah.
Yeah. Wild stuff. I do not want to be in that room. Hey, shouts out. They're back to 13. I guess Michigan's athletic director doesn't have to deal with anything anymore.
Guess not.
And he's back on the committee, so that's good. At least there's 13 heads in that room to at least sway the ballot. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
got to have an odd number, right? Mm-hmm. You know, got to have an odd number.
Is it 12 counting Boo, or is it?
No, it's 13 including Boo. They were down to 12 at one point because Michigan's AD was dealing with the investigation.
Right, I didn't know if it was 12 members in, like Boo oversees it, or if it's okay.
He's just the spokesman.
Gotcha.
I guess he lost the gamble or whatever, short straw stick that they got going on. Hey, there's a lot of things going on in this network that make us really, really proud. All right, a lot of really cool things that go around here. For Christ's sakes, we have Aaron Murray every other once in a while, right? A guy that, you guys grew up watching. I obviously grew up watching. Leads the all-time SEC leader in passing yardage, okay? One of the best players in the conference. Comes on here just to kick it with us. It's wild. All right, there's a lot of things that we get to do in our day-to-day lives as people that work in this industry that blow our mind. The fact that this dude that I'm about to bring on is coming on this network is nuts to me. Okay, and it's wild, and I'm extremely honored to do this. So welcome in legendary Gary Danielson. Gary, how we doing today, man?
I'm good. Can you guys hear me?
Yeah, man, we got you nice and clear, man. We got you nice and clear. Hey, that's right cool. Off the bat, that's obviously, cool. What's up?
That's cool. I'm glad to be a part of it.
Yeah, no doubt. So first off, I wanted to get your immediate reactions on the college football playoff rankings. Ohio State only drops to 6. Did you have a chance to look it over? I'm sure.
I did.
Do you have any initial bones to pick?
Yeah, not really. I think that all these teams, as you've mentioned, those 8 teams have been there all year, basically, in the top 8, and it's kind of shuffling around. I do think. And I'd like to hear what you guys thought. I've never really been capable of deciding who the best is. I would think that those 8 teams on any given day could beat each other. Would you agree with that?
I would, and I think this boils down to the eye test, right? But there's a whole bunch of different eyes looking at it. So how do you judge? It's a great question. How do you judge who the best 4 teams? It was one thing I wanted to go around the football or to the room and discuss. I know who I think the 4 best teams are at this point in college football this year, at this point in time. It's Georgia, it's Michigan, it's Oregon, and it's Texas to me. Those 4 teams in college football are playing the best. And the way I do it, Gary, is I watch them, and it's just it's a feel and a gut thing for me. That's how I would go about it.
Right. I think that's a good way of doing it. But, I think back to 2014 when Ohio State, I think that's something that has to be considered this year. Ohio State lost their top 2 quarterbacks that year. They're playing with Cardell Jones. They're playing a team that everyone thought was better in Alabama. Alabama's leading that game 21-6. They got Cardell Jones backed up, and they find a way to lose that game. So the game has to be decided on the field, and I guess it's an imperfect system. And in some ways, it's perfect for college football because college football, the juice of college football is it's opinionated. And people sit around and discuss it, and they get upset. As you know, I'm in the middle of this every week. I've done 250, college football games in the SEC, and I'll bet 200 of them had national title significance. So no matter what you say about one team or the other, and I understand it. I mean, it's like you're talking about their family, and they don't want to hear it because they know opinion matters. I don't exactly know how to determine who the best is, but sometimes, I don't know where everybody falls here, but I think if a team goes undefeated and they're part of a Power 5 conference, it's tough for me not to put them in the Final Four.
I mean, are y'all metric based? Because I'm a gut film guy. Y'all know this, but are you strength of record, the undefeateds? Got to have a conference? Because I think when we get into that discussion, we're talking about like just checking boxes. We're not like, are we selecting resumes or are we selecting teams? What are we doing? Because I think the whole selecting resume process might be the reason we've had 19-point margins in the quarterfinal or in the semifinals, because we're selecting the most deserving sometimes, not the best football team.
Yeah, well, I mean, the counter argument to that would be obviously Michigan, where for the past 2 years, pretty much the entire season, Michigan was unanimously a top 3 college football team. And then you watch them get to the playoff, and they look like they're not even a top 15 team. So
exactly
to say advanced scouting.
Yeah, well, to still say, my gut tells me this. Yeah, from everything they showed you the first 12 weeks, absolutely they're one of the best teams. But they didn't play like that in the playoffs, and you have to take that into consideration as well.
Lord knows the gut can be wrong. That's for sure.
I mean, I think that's just part of also what makes college football so great is that every single weekend is so unique, because I think we have agreed in the past few years that Michigan is probably one of the best 4 teams.
Yeah.
But one week, TCU has everything go right for them, and they beat you, and they get into the national title game when they didn't think to. And then you had to play Georgia the year before that, coming off of a loss against Alabama, and all the players said it didn't matter who we played that week. We were going to beat them by 40 or 30 regardless. So it's just different.
There's a couple factors here that also I think you have to consider. Just what a conference deserves of what they've put on the paper in 13 out of the last 17 years as a conference. And I think also the fact that Georgia is a 2-time defending champ who's won, 29 straight games. As we've seen in college football, anybody can lose a game. So just because you end up losing your last game, is that any different than losing your third to last game or your second to last game? So it's hard for me to conceive that the conference that has produced all these championships is not going to be represented in the Final Four. One way or another, either Alabama or Georgia is going to be in the Final Four.
I don't disagree with the opinion. Some people listening to this will do the ESPN thing and the SEC, thing, but we got a CBS employee here, so there's no bias there. But
we're all changing teams next year. So
we're gonna get into that, man, because I'm sure there's some nostalgia with this SEC championship game coming up.
Yeah, it always is. It's such a great game, and especially no matter who you do. My first one was Florida. Was it Florida, Arkansas? Yeah, I guess it was Florida, Arkansas. And it's gone on from there. So it's been a great one. And, it really kind of separates teams. But I think what's going to work against the Big Ten is they got in 2 last year. And I don't think they're going to get the benefit of the doubt this year. I do agree with you. The Pac-12 has been center stage all year. and one of those two teams are in. And I think the whole monkey wrench in this thing is that Texas beat Alabama.
Yeah, that one, a week 3 win. And I don't really know how to go back and judge that, because obviously Bama wasn't playing at that time like they are now. But Texas was playing some of their best football early in the year. They're not necessarily exactly peaking right now, but they had a 50-point win last week. So like that discussion, that head-to-head, you're right, Gary. It is the total monkey wrench in the whole entire situation. But I do want to get to this SEC championship game, man, because obviously you're going to be on the call. In my opinion, Gary, this game boils down to whether or not Georgia can keep Jaylen Milroe inside the pocket. I don't necessarily like – some people look at the design quarterback run game. I don't necessarily think that's the threat from Alabama. They've been explosive through the air. But what really terrifies me, if I were to look at this football game, and what really moves the ball explosively for Alabama, is when Jaylen Milroe escapes the pocket. So my question to you, Gary, is have you seen anybody other than Texas A&M be able to corral this guy inside the pocket when he drops back to pass?
It's a great point, and I think you're right. And what's happened here is as Alabama has continued to grow as a football team, more and more teams are seeing on tape exactly what you're talking about. And in essence, it's slowing down the pass rush. Coaches are coaching, don't go past the quarterback, don't give him lanes to come up in through. And he does just enough good things outside of the pocket that a lot of times he has time in the pocket to throw those chunk plays down the field. But I think it's a little bit more than that. Tommy Rees has figured out just a number of plays for Milroe to run. He does not feature him, especially running between the tackles. He does not do that at all. But he does give him a few plays to keep the defense honest. And I also think that this Alabama offensive line has gotten a lot better with the addition of Roberts at right guard. They become a lot more physical with Booker and Robertson inside. They, to me, look Georgia-like now in their offensive line. And they've gotten better all year. The way they play comes right from their quarterback, but don't discount that they've gotten a little bit more physical in that offensive line now.
It's kind of it rolls me into where I wanted to go next, which was, this whole offseason we heard Alabama and the noise out of Alabama be about returning to this, bully ball style and fashion of football. And you are right. I believe Robertson is that 77? I'm a numbers
77,
guy.
77.
Yeah. Okay,
yeah.
You're right.
He took over for
hands.
Delcott. Yeah, he took over for Delcott. And, their left tackle, 74, Proctor, the freshman's gotten better. Yeah. He's passable now. Before he was a big liability. They always had to chip for him. But you got to give their team credit. They are a better team that played Texas in the third game. There's no doubt about that.
Yeah, obviously game 2 of a freshman, Caden Proctor. And not only that, like if you studied Proctor when he was in high school, he was like 330 pounds, but now he's playing at like 360. So not only is he a freshman, he's a freshman who's added on weight. So of course he's going to struggle with a guy like Anthony Hill from Texas, who's an elite speed rusher, right? Like he's gonna have issues like that, which is one thing that I think Georgia has in favor for them this weekend. Guys like Jalen Walker, who can really, really get up the field. Guys like Damon Wilson, who are elite twitch edge rushers, I think are something that guy's shown ability to struggle with, Gary.
Brooks, we've been doing this a lot, and I've been, you try to do both teams, try to do justice for both teams. I don't get to follow them as extensively as you do, and that's why sometimes prior to a game I like to listen to your take on it. It kind of gets me involved in the game and the game plan and things. But I was back about 3 or 4 games ago, and I think I've got 15 guys on the defensive line, and somebody I'd never heard of comes in and makes a sack. And this is not in, mop-up time. This is during the game. Yeah. So that's what you're dealing with Georgia. I do think that it's also interesting that we have, I think, 3 high-quality corners in this game.
Yes.
They're one that everybody likes to pick on. It's not like he's a nobody, but the other 3, and I think that both teams have now with Dylan Bell, and I think I'm just trying to think. Law number 19.
Yep.
They're kind of mirroring each other. They're kind of the guys that I don't.
Did we lose him?
Looks like he disconnected.
All right, looks like we lost Gary there for a second. Oh, here he comes. He's back right now.
But
got you,
those
Gary.
two guys have really become weapons for their football team.
Yeah, no, we mentioned it in the film study, actually, and it was in my film observations that we'll talk about in the local hour. You're right. I call these guys gadget players. They're really, really difficult to not only decide what they're going to do, how they're going to be used, but when we're talking about defenses, we're talking about personnel counts. Do you count them as running backs? Do you count them as wide receivers? Like, we're really, really starting to finagle with how defenses approach base personnel.
But I thought that, too. I thought that as well until I really saw Dylan Bell just play wide receiver that game.
Yeah.
And then I went, he's really unique. What Kendrick Law does, though, for Alabama, he blocks, too.
Yeah.
So when he comes in and he fits on those shotgun ISOs, he's willing to block. Really, really, to me, interesting game. I do think this. I think Kirby is going to go back and defend Jaylen Milroe like he did Cam Newton when he was at Bama. And the way I know they're not the exact guys.
Yeah.
But also the way he defended Tebow when Tebow was at Florida for Alabama. Both times against Cam and against Tebow, they did not run the ball great against Kirby. They took away the run. Both of them actually beat him throwing the ball. So I think that's what Milroe I think Kirby will have a good plan for Milroe and make him beat him in the pocket.
I like that. They will ultimately take away or force you to do what they think you're not best at.
Correct.
And when I watch him, I would want to hold him in the pocket, make him like really, really read through it and make him make tight window throws because I know Georgia can cover with the best of them. One thing I've noticed about this Alabama offense, Gary, and it showed up in that Iron Bowl that you called and I want to talk about, but this defense or this offense, because they're so ultra dependent upon the home run hit, like the home run shot, they wind up finding themselves in 3rd and 12, 3rd and 15, 3rd and 17, 3rd and 20, more than any other successful offense that I have studied.
Yeah, the game was a big surprise to me. I will have to admit that. You know, you watch a bunch of tape of the Auburn. I figured that with Tommy Rees and the way he's brought Milroe along and the effectiveness of them being able to move the ball around now with Isaiah Bond, they had another receiver at Burton. You know what he's like. Yeah. I did not think they'd have as much trouble as they did in this game. I had a bit of a feeling that they were just nervous, that they, did not want to get beaten this game and kind of heard all the rumors about how tough and all the bad things that happened in that stadium. Mm-hmm. And darn if they didn't just kind of let it get in their way. I mean, it was surprising to me that Auburn was able to run the ball as well as they could without a passing game in that game.
And they kind of did a very similar thing to Georgia did Auburn, where it's like, we're going to be almost like a triple option football team today and involve the quarterback in the run game so much that it's going to give you problems because you're not accounting for the quarterback correctly in the run count.
Now, on the other side of this, though, the flip side is that Georgia will not present that problem to Alabama. They're not going to run their quarterback, so they're going to have to figure out a way to be able to make Carson Beck somebody to stop the way he's been doing it all year. I mean, he has been the best passing pocket quarterback, the best NFL quarterback in this league this year. And if he continues to play at that rate, it'll be tough for any college team to stop this offense.
That's a Carson Beck over Jayden Daniels for an NFL comp take from our man.
Well, I'll take Jayden Daniels on my team, though. I'll take him on my team, that's for sure.
That's good stuff right there. Hey, let's get back to that Iron Bowl because, like I said, Alabama has a tendency to find themselves in these 3rd and extremely longs. Okay, It was the 4th and 31, and we'll get to the call because the call was excellent. But, dude, in that game, they had like 4 of those moments. In the first drive of the football game, Auburn gives up a 3rd and 17. Right before the half, they give up a 70-yard explosive, just bust an assignment in the back end. Okay, on that last drive, there's a 3rd and 20 that they give up a 19.5-yard scramble to Jaylen Milroe. How has Alabama, Gary, found a way to just continue to defy? Like, those are statistical anomalies. You're not supposed to convert those, man.
I agree with you, and I think that's one of the reasons when Auburn called timeout after they saw the formation. I don't think there was any mystery of what Alabama was going to do. They were going to go 4 vertical and try to find somebody in the end zone to throw the ball to. I think what happened on the prior 3rd and 20 when they rushed 3 and he found a lane and scrambled. Now, I don't think they were worried about the scramble. I just felt they were holding that one guy back was when he flushed out of the pocket, they'd be able to chase him down where he'd have to throw it off balance. I really don't – it didn't look good. I will mention that. In the game I go, they're only rushing 2. Yeah. I mean, it did seem – it's a bad look for Hugh Freeze, but I really don't think it was that consequential of what happened in the end zone. I think it was a bust in the end zone. You have to stay behind your guy, make sure he can't shove you out of the way. There's always hand fighting on one of those plays, and it was a perfect throw. I really never seen anything like it, I have to admit.
Yeah, I went back.
You know what's tough for Auburn? One more last thing is,
no, you're good.
Alabama's had just about everything, national championships and everything. But the one thing Auburn did have was the kick 6.
Yeah.
And now every time you mention the kick 6, someone's going to say 4th and 31 right after it, I think. I don't think how you can separate those 2 plays from now on.
It was wild. I went back and watched it this morning and really closely watched it. And if you pay attention, Gary, Auburn's running a safety clear across the field right before the snap after a timeout. So I know that they were in prevent, but they were in prevent and had a guy that was running clear across. I promise you, if you go back and watch it, the safety that kind of crosses with Isaiah Bond and number 84, and they switch, that safety that gives up that play, he has to run clear across the field at the last second because they're misaligned. Also, Alabama, after Auburn called a timeout, they flip-flopped Isaiah Bond and Jermaine Burton. When they first lined up, Jermaine Burton's on the side where the touchdown pass goes, and they call a timeout, does Auburn, and Alabama flip-flops it, and then Auburn's late to get onto the field. It was a very, very eerily similar, 10 years later, to a very similar call where
with Chris
the
Davis.
timeout and the kick 6, man.
Exactly.
Alabama calls the timeout to lose the football game. Auburn calls the timeout in this situation to lose the football game. That Iron Bowl, man.
And then Chris Davis goes in when they call the timeout. It is eerily similar. Yeah, you're right. The thing is, Alabama is going to have – Nick wanted to get this team to be more balanced, and he wanted his defense to be more a part of the game, okay? Well, now Alabama's defense has to come through for him. They don't have a running quarterback. Nick is an NFL guy, and he's got basically an NFL offense he's going to go up against here. He's got to keep his offense in the game. I think Alabama's defense is the story of this game right here for Alabama to win.
No, I've been watching them all year. I think that if there's anything that's been Alabama good this year and Alabama standard, it's been that daggum defense, man. They are elite, Gary. And they, like you mentioned them earlier, the corner play is exceptional. The fact that they have a 5th-year guy at the star position, in my opinion, and a 4th-year guy at the jack, or a 3rd-year guy in Dallas Turner, 3rd-year starter. Like, their experience at that, extended portion of the box really kind of situates them a whole lot better against a guy like Brock Bowers than probably anybody else in college football, just because of the amount of experience that they have at those positions, apart from the safety spot. The safety spot's brand new from them.
Well, they better be. Caleb is a really good player. I will give that for him. He really is. But I think it was Brock, and I don't have it right in front of me. I think he caught, 2 years ago, caught 10 passes against this Alabama defense.
Yeah, when they were down in the second half, they were just force-feeding Brock Bowers.
So, and that's what you do with great players. Especially at the tight end position, you can do that because one time you have a strong safety, then you got a strong safety, then you got a linebacker, then you run them across, and you got a weak side linebacker. So there's a lot of ways to force the defense to cover him in different ways.
Yeah, they do a great job of always making sure he's moving around. And he's going to be at the best version of himself possible thanks to that week off against Georgia Tech. You got anything?
I got a question later, but we can keep going.
I got something I want to add, though.
What's up, man?
Just talking about Alabama's offense, too, I think one thing they have maintained as well is the explosivity of this offense as well. I found an interesting stat about Alabama and specifically Jaylen Milroe on 3rd down. He has 16 less completions than Carson Beck on third down this year, but he has 15 more passing yards than him on third down.
Holy smokes.
So when that proves your point of they've been in third and long situations probably quite a bit this year.
They've been living in them.
But they convert quite a bit of them as well because Jaylen Milroe on that offense have the ability to be explosive.
And his legs on third down become a major factor.
Yeah, I think one of the things that's going to be interesting is how aggressive will Georgia be on third down? Because do they want to flood? He ends up against most teams getting more time on third and long than the average guy because nobody really wants to aggressively rush him.
Yeah, they want to mush rush him constantly. Kirby said this week that they have the longest time to pass in the sport. A lot of this is due to what you're talking about. It's so funny because the game plan for any type of scrambler is identical across the board. Everybody has it. You must rush him. You always play zone. You always keep eyes on him. All right. And eventually, if worse comes to worse, we want to put a spy on him. Everybody's got the same game plan. Everyone knows how to stop a scrambling quarterback. The problem is this guy is the most explosive athlete on the field with the ball in his hand, and he's the only guy out of anyone else on the field that knows exactly where he is running, which it's noticeable on tape when you watch this guy, Gary. He's the most explosive player on the field.
Yeah, he does have, and I wish I would have added this earlier because I do have it in my notes. He does have a lot of the traits that Jalen Hurts had in his first year, and when they faced Georgia, when he got pulled at halftime in the national championship game, Kirby handled him as well pretty good, forced to it in the game. So I think Kirby is going to feel comfortable that he has some ideas on how to defend it. I look forward to seeing what his strategy is. I kind of sometimes think, though, that as much as you want to do this, I wonder with that NFL side of me that I used to see played against the Glanvilles of the world and now Wink Martindales. Sometimes I wonder if I wouldn't even say that to anybody and just say, go get that sucker. Quit worrying about your lanes. Let's go play rush offense. And I tell you, when he gets a spy on him, one thing you got to be fast enough to stay with him. And the next you got to be strong enough to tackle him. I mean, there's a double edge. That's why he reminds me a lot of Cam. Yeah. In that Cam had that burst that he could turn, but then if he was there, he was tough to tackle.
I don't. The one thing I noticed about studying him is that in their traditional passing game, if he throws the ball 30 times tomorrow, 29 of them are going to be from the same exact drop. They don't roll this guy.
And he's flat-footed, too, when he does it. He just kind of stands there, no motion, no wind up, and then he just chucks it. It is interesting.
I'm with you, Gary, in the sense that I know where he's going to be. Every single time I know where he's going to be. So I think there is some opportunities for Georgia to tee off on this guy. And I think a lot of their early season woes in terms of giving up sacks was because he was being indecisive. He was not deciding immediately, right. All right, I got to pull it down and go now.
So he's gotten better. I'd like to try to flip it up one more time, as I just think that the guy who's going to have the most strategic game calling plays is going to be Mike Bobo. Yeah. He's always known how to move the ball against Nick Saban in games before. I think he has an idea of how to set up his plays. I think he knows he's got a lot of weapons. And I think we could see a Mike Bobo masterpiece in this game.
Hey, the one thing I was thinking about is that, everyone's kind of giving Georgia some shit this year about their schedule, and that's fine. But the advantage of this is the fact that they've been able to kind of matriculate their way through the schedule being relatively vanilla. They have not been in a fourth quarter football game outside of Auburn. And you saw what happened when he needed to drive real quick against Auburn. That sun gun was dialing and got guys wide open. I'm with you. And the last 3 or 4 weeks that Brock's been available, the last 2 games, I should say, he's been available. He hasn't been of use or extreme use like normal, or design a portion of the offense in terms of we're going to design explosives off the fact that we have 19 like they normally do. So I think the fact that like you're saying, Gary, it is a coordinator battle at some point in this football game. It ultimately comes down to winning one-on-ones and providing your opportunity for your players to get into those. And Bobo's had the ability to kind of stow them up. I do want to – I know we've been talking ball, Gary, but I do want to kind of get nostalgic with you because this is the last one. This is the last SEC championship game and SEC football game that you're going to cover before, CBS goes on to the Big Ten. And I don't know, you've called a ton of them, all right, a quarter of a century or a quarter of 1,000 of these things.
Right.
What's your favorite moment? Do you have one? Do you have a favorite game? Do you have a favorite call? Do you have one where you like, dang, man, I love that one?
Yeah. Brooks, I do. They blend together. I got to be honest. I remember Nick Saban after Florida beat him the first time, and he had stopped Tebow, got into the fourth quarter. They had the game under control, and Tebow goes 8-8 and wins the game. And Nick, afterwards, said, "We had him right where we want him. He made the throws. He made the plays. He beat us." I go back to the game when the year before, 2nd and 26, when Jaylen Hurts got benched in the national championship game, and Tua makes that throw, and then he comes back the next year and does the opposite and flips when Tua is hurt. And he just showed like staying with it and sticking to it is a great memory. I also have great thoughts about Stetson Bennett. Not only did he win a championship, I mean, it was like a 3-year march. He had that tough game. I guess it was Jacksonville against Florida.
Florida 2020
and,
was rough.
And it looked like that might be the end of it. The Georgia fan base did never want to hear of Stetson Bennett again. They never wanted him to play again. Kirby put his arm around him. I think I said on the broadcast that Kirby knows he's going to need him one more time. And they ended up winning a national championship. And for him to go back-to-back as a walk-on, those are great. I always think kind of players, more than just games. I like to watch people overcome things. And we've had our fair share of all that stuff happen one way, inside out. And we've also been part of, the history of watching people transfer, the Joe Burrow story of him coming from Ohio State here. We've seen just about everything. And the fact that I got to do it with Vern and now Brad Nessler, 2 Hall of Famers in this conference, it's been a great ride. I did my first game in 1990. My first game was Ty Detmer against the Miami Hurricanes when he beat them in an opening game and won the Heisman, first game of the year. And now we're going to finish off this with a SEC championship game between Alabama and Georgia. There's some guys that make more money than me. Some guys do NFL, but nobody's had a better seat than me. We've really had a great run here.
Hey, you've had a great seat and a great run, but I will tell you this, Gary. You don't have the easiest job in the world. I don't think a lot of people give you enough credit. And because they've never been in that seat, they don't really know. I've had granted, it's been on the high school level, and I have dreams and aspirations of maybe being in that seat one day in a bigger stage. But you don't understand what all goes into the role, and I don't think the average viewer understands how little you have an opportunity to really see. You're watching the play in real time. You get one little clip of it before the producer throws it up to the audience, and then you're having to replay it. On top of all the little vitriol you get, Gary, there's this weird vibe from SEC fans, and I don't know if you know this, okay, but I'm gonna let you know that it is a thing. Everybody in the SEC thinks you hate them and that you love Alabama. So what's the deal, man?
Well, so I've been trained pretty good at this, okay? I played 13 years of NFL football and played for Detroit and Cleveland. I wasn't a bench sitter. I was a free agent, worked my way up there, and you got to have a thick skin to play quarterback in the NFL, and your 3 bad passes of being benched every time you're on the field in that league. And so you have to be able to handle the criticism, and you also have to be able to handle the fact that after the game, there are some famous plays that I was part of that didn't go my way that weren't my fault. But I never let it on. The quarterback's job is to eat that afterwards. You got to go out there, can't throw anybody under the bus. You got to be a man and be a leader and not lose your locker room, and the guys always wanted to play for me. And I think the people that I work with at CBS, I keep getting another contract every year. So they must. I'm in a unique spot. Being the same broadcaster every week for 18 years. People are ready for something new. I think it's not like they. I go around and do 20 different games. I do 5 Alabama games, 5 Georgia games when they're winning, 5 Florida games when they're winning, 5 LSU games when they're winning. So I get it. It doesn't bother me. There's only one part of it that bothers me. We have a crew that has treated the SEC with great respect. Mm-hmm. We have produced magnificent television. We've been Emmy Award winning. I've been nominated 6 times. We do good work.
Yes, you do.
Whether it was all accolades about Gary Danielson or all vitriol, the only thing I can handle that. What I don't like is that the crew and everybody that works so hard doesn't get the respect that they deserve. It becomes too much about me and not enough about the job CBS has done.
I will tell you this right now. Whoever doesn't have a tremendous amount of respect and appreciation for the CBS broadcast, they'll feel it next Saturday or next year on Saturday afternoon at 3:30. We don't get to hear that sound. We don't get to hear that CBS intro music. Gary, when you first heard that sucker, did you get some goosies? Because I get goosies every Saturday when I listen to that thing.
Yeah, you get fired up for that. That's for sure. It is. I don't know if you knew that, but that music I think was first used in a Super Bowl for CBS. And then it became the theme song for their college football before they even got the package for SEC football. But in my mind, and I'm going to be headed to the Big Ten football next year. I signed for next year. We're going to be using that music, and I'll have to concentrate real hard in those opens. You're right. I'll have to concentrate on Washington versus Wisconsin. I think it was actually 1993, so that's 30 years ago this week. Yeah. Nestler and I did Wisconsin and Michigan State in Tokyo. The winner of that game played in the Rose Bowl. So we've done just about everything together, so I think we can handle this game, this last one.
Why the hell was it in Tokyo?
Neither one of them thought they were going to go to a bowl, and it ended up Barry Alvarez got his team rolling. And so what they thought was going to be their opportunity to take their team and celebrate was on the road. That's when Wisconsin wasn't drawing flies to their game. They thought we might as well give up this game and go play in Tokyo to reward our kids. And it ended up being the matchup for the Rose Bowl.
Bro,
it's crazy.
Someone watching this show 10 years from now is going to win a sports trivia game off of Tokyo right there.
Off of Tokyo, right, you got it.
Hey, Gary, I can't thank you enough for coming onto this network and doing this, man. I know you don't do a lot of these for real.
No, I don't. Hey, let me just say, I like to watch people who intelligently respect the game of football. I don't have to agree with everything. I don't expect people to agree with me. My wife's sitting right over there. She hardly agrees with me at all, So I get all this stuff. But you guys respect the game. I think when people are thirsty for football, it's a hard game to understand. There's 22 moving parts all the time out there. It's not like watching baseball or basketball, a lot of, one-on-one stuff. Football is not one-on-one. There are battles. There's individual battles. But, so many times, the guy on the backside who just took the wrong step in the wrong direction ended up being the story of the game. So thank you for respecting the game. Say hi to your guys around you, and hopefully we'll have a great game this Saturday.
Hey, I hope to see you this Saturday, Gary. I thank you very much, man. Gary Danielson, the legend, the last time this weekend on CBS calling SEC football. Hey, Gary Danielson, give him 3.
You got it.
Whew, man. That's some pretty cool stuff right there, huh, boys?
That was crazy.
That was freaking awesome.
I don't even know. It just smiles all around, dog.
But how fitting that we get to have him on the show right before it's his last one, getting to call. And what a fitting end for him that he gets to call Georgia versus Alabama as his last game on CBS, too. Like, that's such a fitting ending to all of this.
Hey, look, man, that joker don't do none of those, okay? That guy is a made man. He don't do no podcast interviews. He don't go on YouTube shows. He does not do that, okay? He does not do what he just did tonight. He spent 50 minutes with us hobnobbing, talking college football. And I don't want to go too deep, But he said it himself. He said why he chose to come on this network and why he was willing to do it, because we're certified ball knowers around here. And you know what? It means a little something to some people. You know who else is a certified ball knower? That boy Gary Danielson. That boy Gary Danielson, a certified ball knower. And I don't want to hear nothing, okay? I want to hear nothing negative about Gary for the rest of time, okay? From nobody associated or affiliated with this network here, okay? Because he's a certified ball knower. And from someone who listens and critically listens. Y'all been in cars with me. Y'all been in car. I am miserable to listen to a television broadcast with, because I am more critical about that stuff than anything. Because I think I know what it's supposed to sound like and what it's supposed to look like. That's a ball knower. All right, him and Kirk about the only ones that I listen to, and Joel Klatt every once in a while. But Joe Klatt, man, clearly got the Fox boys in his ear every single time, and it's like we can feel that as audience members. I have never felt like Gary has called it any other than straight down the pipe every single time I've ever listened to him.
Yeah, I thought you were going to chuck the laptop out of the window when we were listening to USC versus Notre Dame on the ride home.
That was painful.
Yeah, Jason Garrett shouldn't be on a college football call. I don't think that is not someone who cares about college football. So yeah, and the other guy, I need the other guy's seat. Somebody needs that guy's seat. What did we have? Do we have any other NBR topics? Do we want to play Guess the Lines real quick? We got 8 minutes. Let's do it. We only got 4 games, right? 5 games? 5 conference championship games? Let's do it. Hey, make sure you hit that thumbs up button, like, subscribe, and rate, reviewing. That boy Gary loves the show. You should too. Subscribe to the channel. What do you got for us?
You want to get weird and do one of the lower tier ones?
I don't. I'm here for getting weird.
All right. Let's do Tulane versus SMU.
Oh my God.
Tulane versus SMU.
Yep.
SMU, solid football team. 1-loss program this year?
10-2.
10-2. 2-loss program this year. Where's this game being played?
Heck if I know.
Good question.
This game
It's
is
got to be a
being
neutral
played
site, right?
Yeah.
at Ullman Stadium in New Orleans.
Oh, so that's
not a neutral site. That's a Tulane.
Yeah, that is Tulane's
All right,
field.
give me Tulane -3.
I'll go Tulane -5.5. I think that they're probably a more superior team.
Brooks beat you by half a point. It's -4.
Let's go.
Always.
Who's up next?
All right, we'll do FSU versus Louisville.
Ooh.
This one's weird because obviously the Jordan Travis thing, but also Louisville losing to Kentucky the week before is going to change that number a bit. I want to say Florida State's going to be favored by close to a touchdown.
Mm-hmm.
I'll go Florida State 6.
I was going to say 6.5.
Well, you just got beat by half a point. It's Florida State -2.5.
Whoa.
Wow.
Yeah, they think it's going to be real close.
So they think Florida or Louisville is substantially better than Florida?
Yeah.
Because Florida State played that game on the road and was favored by 6.5 points against a fellow backup quarterback. All right. And now they're favored by 2.5. So I guess that's the difference. Jack Plummer's playing in this football game.
Mm-hmm.
But man, that Louisville game last week, that's a laying of an egg.
Mm-hmm.
Now, is Jeff Brom a football coach that can quote unquote get his guys back up? That's the question I think Vegas ultimately just decided for us. They think the answer is yes. I hope for college football fans, nature and state, that Florida State loses that football game. No offense. I can't keep doing that because Florida State fans subscribe to our channel at extremely high rates. I'm sorry, Seminoles. I hope – here's the good news. Y'all ain't going nowhere. Yeah. Mike Norvell figured that thing out, and you're clearly the supremacy of that conference right now. So that's good news. You ain't going nowhere. Just this year, don't – oh, man. What else?
Michigan versus Iowa.
All right, so I cheated, but I only know from Sunday. All right, Sunday it was 23.5.
Yeah, I was
over was 35.5. Okay.
Oh my God.
Yeah. So they're basically telling you they expect this game to be 24-10.
Yeah.
Okay, 24-10. I'm gonna say Michigan by 18.5, 20.
Oh, you think it dropped that much?
I think it dropped. I think they think that I think they see it the way I see it. I see 28-10. I see 31-20 or 31-10, 31-7, something like that.
So you said 20?
I think 21.5. Well, I'm going to hold it 21.5.
5-point drop in 48 hours is a lot. I'll go 22 even.
It's -23. So really haven't moved that much. But I think that is pretty steep just knowing that the type of brand of football.
If you told me Michigan didn't score 22.5 or 23 points Saturday, I wouldn't be surprised.
Yeah. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, Michigan's clearly shown you that these past 4 weeks they're going to try to punch you in your face and just repeatedly do that to you. Now, I mean, I know it hasn't been officially confirmed yet. Is Harbaugh coaching this game or not? I mean, the suspension's technically up, isn't it?
The Big Ten suspension is, and we haven't gotten an answer from the NCAA.
So I mean,
I would assume so.
Unless you get a bombshell within the next 3 days, he's coaching in this game. So
which has happened before.
So I mean, I would have to assume at this point that the offense is going to look different with Harbaugh at the reins.
All right,
fair enough. Liberty versus New Mexico State.
Now you're getting
This game,
fishy.
I'll tell you where it's being played at. This game, Williams Stadium in Virginia.
Yeah, neither. Oh, that means Liberty's basically at home because they're from Lynchburg, right?
That sounds right.
Liberty's still undefeated, so
12-0.
Give me Liberty. It's me up first?
Yeah.
Give me Liberty minus 3.5.
I'm going to go higher. I'll go Liberty minus 7.5.
It's Liberty minus 10.
Yeah.
That's a lot of points. Caden Salters played good this year, which was no surprise. He was a super talented kid coming out of high school, got into some trouble at Tennessee, and ended up getting bounced. I think Caden Salter, the way he's playing, might have pushed Joe Milton for some playing time this year. Honest to God.
All right, final one of the weekend. Oklahoma. Oh, obviously other than Georgia, Alabama, but Oklahoma State versus Texas.
Go ahead. You're up.
Here's my thing on Oklahoma State. They're a run-the-ball team. That's their bread and butter.
Are they? They threw it 38 times last week.
Yeah, but they're most successful when they run the ball,
Correct.
it seems. And Texas is a defense that is built to stopping the run. So I think it's going to be a low over in this game, and I would go Texas by 11 points.
I'm going to go 10 just to play it under.
Texas minus 14.5. Over-under's 55.5.
Whoa.
That's higher than I was expecting. I was expecting mid-40s for an over-under.
I just don't know what to do with Oklahoma State.
No,
I don't know who's going to show up.
Big 12,
I don't know what kind of football team.
Big 12 championship weekend always gets some weird
Real
stuff.
gets hairy
going.
every year.
There's some
hairy every year.
weird stuff.
There's last play ball if it's an inch long or an inch further hitting a pylon type shit with Baylor and Oklahoma State a couple years ago.
Yep.
Just all kinds of crazy stuff in that Big 12 championship game. It's going to be one to watch. It's always one that it starts at noon, I'm pretty sure.
Yep.
And it's always one that's on every single time I come into the bins for the SEC championship game, which is basically like an annual appearance for your boy nowadays, which is kind of cool.
That's pretty dope.
It's a good one to cover. I hope one day that we're going to be cool enough to get you guys in there and get y'all credentialed. I don't know. Like Gary ought to be like, hey, they're certified ball knowers. Hey, these guys right here, certified ball knowers. Make sure they get a spot.
We'll earn our cred one day.
I mean, worst case scenario, Gary could be like, hey, I need security detail, and I got 6'6" in mustache. And that's what we're rocking with
Give
today.
you the biz. We stand on business for Gary.
Absolutely, I would. I stand right on business for Gary. We got another one? SEC championship game, right? It's 5.5.
Yeah.
is what it
I
is.
didn't do it because we all
didn't
know.
do it. We all right.
What
on
about
it.
Pac-12? I mean, I
Pac-12, dude, that one's shooting up crazy. I think last time I saw Oregon was favored by 10.5 points.
I think it's hovering around 10.
Oregon's favored by 9.5.
Yeah.
All right, here's what I want to do while we have a massive audience watching our national hour. 4 best football teams in the sport right now. Who are they? Today. Don't care. I do care, but who's the best football teams in the sport? 4 best.
I'm in agreement with you. I think it is Georgia, Michigan, Texas, and Oregon. I think those are the 4. Those are the teams to me that throughout the entire season have played and continued to hold that standard of like that is a really good football team. They look the part of someone that should be in the college football playoff all the way up until conference championship weekend. We'll see what happens this weekend. But I think right now those are the 4 best teams to me.
Yeah, honestly, I agree with J-Lo. Georgia, Michigan, Texas, Oregon. I mean, you could possibly make an argument for Washington over Texas because Washington hasn't lost a game, but I mean – I have no qualms about those being the 4 best teams.
All right, so we all think those are the 4 best teams. They all win out. Florida State wins out. Who gets kicked?
Well, I mean, if you're talking
Texas
is going to get.
If you're talking
the boot,
by
man.
rankings, Texas is the lowest ranked.
Texas is going to get the boot.
Texas gets the boot, despite the fact that they have a conference championship and a road win over Alabama. Oregon's getting over them.
And you know,
Yeah, because Oregon
Will have beat a top 16.
Well, not even
to
that.
end the season.
Oregon's loss is a lot better than Texas is now.
And they would have avenged it.
And you know what? This is exactly why, way back when they started the rankings and they put Texas in that position, I said this is exactly why the rankings are going to matter because right now they're telling Texas, your win over Alabama is not good enough for us to just say you went out the rest of the way and you win the Big 12, that you're automatically going to get into the playoff. That's why these rankings matter.
This discussion sounds totally different if Oklahoma handled their end of the bargain and Texas would have been avenged their loss against another top 8 program.
Yeah.
So, shouts out to Oklahoma for essentially potentially costing Texas a chance into the college football playoff. Also, shouts out to Oklahoma State, who has a chance to piss on multiple parades this year. Not only Big Brother in Oklahoma, but Big Brother in Texas, who are giving you a big middle finger leaving your conference.
Yep.
Yeah.
So, shouts out to the Hokies. I always do that. Virginia Tech.
Cowboys.
The Cowboys. Shouts out to the Cowboys. They got a chance to do something crazy. Hey, we have a whole nother hour. We are 2 hours in. We got a third hour coming up right here, and it's our best hour. It is our local hour. We're going to talk that dog here in a second. Make sure you hit that thumbs up button on your way out. If you were new, make sure you're subscribing. Certified Ball Knows right here. Gary said so.